Thank you, Martin. Okay, so I've got my Get Excited and Make Things t-shirt on. And if my wife had spotted me leaving this morning, she would have said two things. She would have said, don't wear that t-shirt, it's a cliche. She's a designer. And she would have said, don't wear that t-shirt, it's green and it makes you look fat. Actually, she probably would have said it makes you look fatter, to be fair. I don't care. I don't care because I think I am one of the most lucky people alive to be living in an era when I can go into work every day and get excited and make things. And I think we're all lucky, most of you in this room are lucky to actually get the chance to get excited about making things. I've been to call centres recently around the country where government employees, civil servants are sitting answering a phone. Trust me, you are some of the luckiest people in the world. I mean it. So how did I get to do this kind of stuff in government? Why is the government having a government digital service? About 2 years ago, Martha Lane Fox, founder of Last FM, the sainted Martha Lane Fox, was asked by this government to review on its behalf what government was doing online. Martha wrote a 4-page report. You only need to know one thing about that report. It's the subtitle. The subtitle was Revolution, Not Evolution, which gives a bit of a clue of the contents. And Martha basically recommended 4 things. She said, create government digital service, get yourself some people in the middle of government, Cabinet Office is in the middle of government, who are real digital specialists. This is not a job for generalist civil servants at the moment. That's done. We were founded just under a year ago. We're now at 150 people. We exist. We also have, I think the phrase she used was unequivocal control over the user experience across the government. Power. So we have powers and controls to actually encourage other bits of government to do the right thing, is a polite way of putting it. The second thing she said was fix publishing. Because central government alone had about 450 websites. They all look different. They all work different. You needed to know which bit of government did what you needed to do before you could actually do it. So fix publishing was consistent user experience, get back to the user needs, get yourself onto a single web address, like the BBC. So on October the 17th, gov.uk, which is currently in beta, been in beta a while, will replace DirectGov and BusinessLink. So go and have a look. Some of the product managers in the room sweating a bit. So it's about 35 million users a month who really rely on those services are going to get a new experience, a much improved experience in 2 or 3 weeks' time. She also said fix transactions. That's much harder. There's a lot more money spent there. The contracts last a lot longer. We're just starting that journey. She also said go wholesale. What she meant by that was build APIs, share those APIs with third parties, so government services, government transactions don't have to only exist on gov.uk, they can be in other people's websites. Actually, it turns out 3/4 of self-assessment forms, and there's about 8 million of them submitted every year online, 3/4 of those are submitted via HMRC's API from third-party software, third-party sites. Actually, the government does more of this than I have realised already. Right. Enough of sales pitch about GDS. I've meant for a while to thank Martin for inviting me to speak at Product Tank last November about the alpha of gov.uk. And one of the reasons I wanted to thank him was he finally gave me an answer to a question that I've been worried about for quite some time. My daughter, when asked by a friend of hers about what does your dad do, she said, oh, PowerPoint. So I've been worrying about this question. When her kids, presuming she has kids, asked me the question, say, Grandad, what did you do in the digital revolution? I now know I was a product manager. I had a whole bunch of names next to the stuff I did before. Producer, editor, chief wrangler of volunteers for They Work For You. I don't know, loads of different job titles, none of which really meant anything. But I actually, really looking back, it was my job to get to deliver the baby, really. And just at the moment when I realised that that's what I've done, I also realised there's now a whole generation of people who are far better than I was, and I'd better stop doing it. But what I talked about at Product Tank was alpha.gov.uk, which was, as I say, an alpha of that vision that Martha had for just start again with a revolution about how government does web publishing. Just have one site, focus on user needs, get right back to the heart of how you can design a product experience that meets them. I was lucky enough to get that gig. What a brilliant brief. Blank piece of paper. Completely blank piece of paper. I had a room, I had permission to go and hire about 10 people. I got about half of them from inside government. It was very easy to spot who those people were. They were the people actually trying to do interesting stuff. And about half of them from outside. We had a brilliant time over 10, 12 weeks doing weekly sprints to a deadline that had been set in public to launch an alpha of gov.uk. It wasn't complete, obviously, but it gave the sense of the experience. So I talked a bit about that at Product Tank. It was fantastic. And at the end, there was a whole bunch of questions that people asked me that I was totally unprepared for. I hadn't thought about what we were doing. It's a bit like I hadn't realised I was a product manager. I just sort of got away with it somehow. And so last time, it was about, I think last November, people like you asked me lots of questions, and I didn't give some very good answers to some of them. So I want to give you some better answers to some of the questions. Answers that I've thought about a bit more, and answers that also reflect the fact that since doing the alpha, we've done several different releases of the beta of gov.uk. We've started with transactions. We're much bigger, much, much bigger, and there's some new learnings to have. I'm going to end with one particular question that was really painful for me, but we'll come back to that. So, first question. Easy one, actually. What was your product vision? Now, sadly, I wasn't here this morning. I understand there was quite a lot about product vision. And apparently, I should have changed my slides to react, but I can't be asked to do that. So, I wasn't here. So the product vision for alpha.gov.uk was really cynical. Let's go back a bit. So why do you have a product vision? You have a product vision so you can get excited about the same thing. It's great getting excited, but you want your team to be excited about the same opportunity. You also want your product vision to be representative of the emotional response you want in your customer, whoever your user is. So I'm a real believer in having one product vision and getting your whole team behind it and really believing it and sharing it as a shared vision. The product vision for alpha.gov.uk, as I say, was cynical is probably a bit strong, but it was this. A government minister should look at this alpha and have the following emotional response. I want one of those. Okay. That was the product vision for alpha.gov.uk, a government minister wanting something like that. And the reason for that was there was no way we were going to get permission to do a beta or the real thing unless that user, that customer in this case, had that reaction. So to give you an example, so that meant when we went through the process of identifying what the user needs were, and we found about 1,000 of them and prioritized them and did all the stuff you do for a government website, which is all about tasks, meeting people's tasks. We only did the top 100 tasks out of 1,000. And we didn't even do all of the top 100. We did about 70 of them that we chose quite carefully to make sure we had one really great example of how we'd met a particular need for every one of those ministers that we wanted to target. This was the one targeted at the Foreign Office. Okay, so this is a user need that says, I lost my passport, or had my passport stolen. Currently, if you go to the government's website and you type that in, you'll get about 8 pages of description. Actually, it's quite a complicated process. There are quite a lot of variables when you lose your passport. It depends on whether you've had your passport lost or stolen. There's a different process to follow if you have those. And it also depends whether you're inside the UK or outside the UK. And if you're outside the UK, it depends which country you're in outside the UK. Solving that problem with flat web publishing is quite hard, given someone's just going to go to Google and type, I've lost my passport, wherever they are in the world. So we did a bit of IP detection, so we knew what country you're in, ergo most of the problem is solved. Simple as that. And we made it look a bit pretty. So here's an example of if you're in Germany and you lost your passport, IP detection would spot you in Germany, bing, bang, bong. We'll just show you what you actually do if you lose your passport in Germany is you ring the consulate and they'll sort it all out for you. That was probably in the top 20 user needs, but we did some that were much lower down, targeted at specific ministers. Like we made homepages, we made websites for each ministerial department with beautiful big pictures of ministers on that made them look really great. Frankly, the usage of those is non-trivial. A lot of them get a lot of traffic, but we knew actually I want one of those required us to do that. Now that's an alpha. That's where you're trying to get permission to do the next stage, or we were anyway. This is the current, actually, this isn't the beta, actually. This is the real thing. This is a sneak preview of the real thing, of the homepage of the real thing. Stop joking now, because the product vision for this is deadly serious. This is the real deal, okay? And the product vision for this is simpler, clearer, faster for users, savings and innovation for government. We've got two user groups. The most important one by miles are the end users. We want it simpler, clearer, faster. And if you walked into GDS, you'd see a whole team with that virtually tattooed on their foreheads as a driving vision. If you talk to my boss, Mike Bracken, he will be talking about savings and innovation for government as he goes around the rest of Whitehall saying why this approach is a good thing. Really important product visions, live them. And it's all about the emotional reaction. You want your users to be going, oh, this is simpler. Oh, this is clearer. Oh, this is faster. All right. Second question I got asked. How did you choose your team? And I really hadn't thought about this. This is one of those things where I've post hoc rationalized. But I look back at how I've built teams over the years, and there is a bit of a common pattern. Here's some of the team for the beta, actually. Number one, hire for attitude. Okay? Hire people who are open, who are curious. You heard about curious, reference previous talk. Who are passionate, who are going to take a problem and run with it, and take on the trust that you give them, take on the trust that the rest of the team gives them to go and solve a problem. Polymaths, please. I'd like as many polymaths as I can. They don't have to have long hair. It's all about the trust in that team. It's all about hiring people who, frankly, are emotionally open to the emotion within a team, not just the process within a team. You want people who, at the retrospective, we use sort of a variant of Scrum, at the retrospective at the end of each sprint, that should feel like therapy. You want people who relish the fact that what's not working is often relationships between people. You often hide behind all the process isn't working. No, it's the relationships that aren't working. You want to hire people who can have those open relationships. If they can code and design and write great content, even better. But hiring for that attitude is number one. You also want to build your team to be noisy. I don't just mean sort of noisy in terms of shouting and talking to each other, although frankly, I do love the fact that people stand up and talk to each other all the time in GDS. It's quite hard to get people sat down occasionally. It's also building noisy systems. So when something goes wrong, the team know about it. I won't go on about noisy systems. It's a lot of good stuff there. The second theme about building the team, and this is really a reflection of going from alpha to beta to live, is that the team needs to change as you evolve as an organization, as you grow, as your product grows. And the people you have at the start are maybe not the people you need at the end, or when you release the product, or when you scale. And we've had some fantastic people come and work for GDS, and they've left after working for a year or so. And I love them, and I'd work with them again in an instant if we're doing another startup. But they're not right for the scale we're at, the stage we're at the moment. That, by the way, includes me. So at Easter, I was lucky enough with my boss to realise that I wasn't the person to launch Gov.uk. I'm not launching Gov.uk. Some of the people in the room are. I'm great at getting things out the door initially. I'm not the person to worry about a piece of critical national infrastructure. Gov.uk, trust me. So a colleague of mine, Etienne, is now leading the project. And I think that self-awareness, both about yourself and about the team you've got, and being mature about that conversation is really, really important. Okay, next question. Why did you have design rules? When When we did the alpha, we had these index cards that we'd scribbled over and stuck on a pillar in the room. Incredibly powerful device. I love design rules. We had things like do less. Google's the homepage. That means most people start on Google when they search. Optimize for the common case. Hide complexity. Don't support IE6 or words to that effect. Why are they important? And on the beta, and since then, we've actually gone a lot further, and we've really illustrated what we call our design principles. There's a list of the list of 10 of them there. If you go to gov.uk/design principles, there's a whole load of rich examples and explanation as to why we think these are the guiding rules, the principles by which we design our product. They're important for two reasons. One, they're important because they mean as you scale, every member of your team, wherever they are, whichever bit of the country they're in, if they hit a problem and they're by themselves, they'll have something to hang on to about how they solve that problem. Okay? There's something there that bounds it, that constrains it, and gives them steers. They're also important, bluntly, for propaganda purposes in the organisation you're in. And I will come on to that in a minute about the power of memes, the power of language, the power of changing organisations by changing the language. And design rules and the design principles that we've replaced them with have been really powerful in government. And actually, they were very powerful in the BBC when I worked there. We did a list of 15 there about changing the organisation by changing the way it talks about its products. Right, next question. What methodology did you use? Well, I already talked about the fact we use Scrum. So we're agile, right? We use agile project management. Well, we sort of are, but we own the process doesn't own us. We think of it as sort of agile jazz. And when you type, how do you make jazz into Google, this is what you get. That's how you make jazz, apparently. So that's my process. What I mean by that is we do, I really like agile. Actually, I really like the fact that it provides a common language for the team to talk in. It puts a bit of structure, as long as you don't let the process rule you. So we have really encouraged teams to really own the process, change it when it doesn't work. For example, penultimate sprint on the alpha, we decided to drop agile, drop Scrum, and just panic by putting things on the wall. Okay, these are what these were. That's right, that was the right thing to do. It worked for us. We scrapped the middle of the ninth sprint and just went, panic. One thing I would say, though, about that approach, about allowing teams to own and flex their own process, it really gets difficult as you get multiple agile teams, as you get bigger products and you get lots of teams. We've got sort of 7 or 8 teams working at the moment, 7, 8, 9 people each. We are hurting because we're allowing each of those teams too much freedom to be able to change team quickly, for example. If someone's worked for 3 months in one team and then goes to another team, they don't know what the hell's going on. So we're thinking about that one. That's not working so well, and we'll have to fix that. Next question. How did you know when you had a minimum viable product? I used to say, you know when you've got a minimum viable product, when the moment you suggest to your team that we're going to take the password off, their faces look like that. That they're terrified and feel sick of the fact that there's so many things they haven't finished, so many things they wanted and needed to do, and they can't possibly put it live. It's just like, what are the things we haven't done? Actually, when I look back and analyse, that's just hype and propaganda. That's not what I've done, actually. What I've tended to do is think a bit, pick a deadline, publicise the deadline out there in the wild, and then manage the scope to fit. That's what we did with the alpha. We went 3 months, feels about right. Let's go and tell the Daily Telegraph we're going to launch in 3 months' time, and then we'll have to launch. The minister didn't like that, but oops. And the same, frankly, with the beta. We said, 6, 7 months, that feels about right. Hey, pub blog, January 31st, we will launch the beta, and then you really have to hit it. So that's roughly what I've done. So I was lying about the colour of the face thing, but you should feel ill at the things you haven't had time to do when you launch your minimum viable product. Next question. Did you hit any big problems developing in the open? One of the things we did with the alpha, and we've carried on doing, is we've just tried to be as open as possible with what we're doing, how we're doing it, the tools we're using. We blog a lot about what we're doing, we tweet all the time, we take photos. You're paying for it, frankly, so you might as well learn what we're doing. So all our code's open source on GitHub, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Did we have any problems with that, someone asked me? No. Go and have a look at the blog, go and have a look at GitHub. I got Mike Butcher emailed me last night with a suggestion about the ePetitions website, saying, why haven't you got share buttons on Twitter, share, and Facebook? We run the ePetitions website. And I emailed back and said, go to GitHub, put the code in, send me a pull request. I can't tell you how satisfying that was to be able to say. Taxpayers' money, Mike. Go and fix it yourself. Thank you very much. Next question, what was your biggest mistake? Biggest mistake was hubris. Hubris, believing your own hype. We let that Google is the homepage thing sort of take us over a bit. And we ran out of time to do the homepage on the alpha, and we just put a big search box in the middle. We didn't really have time to do browse properly. And that carried on over to the beta, that we had just a big search box on the homepage. That's kind of how we'd like to use it. And it was only really relatively recently, when I disappeared for a bit, I think, that the team actually did some proper user testing of people who actually use homepages in anger. We don't use homepages in anger. We get it Google, okay? We get it from social media. People who use homepages because they have to really don't like having a search box there. Some of them can't type. Some of them can't spell. Some of them are just terrified about using anything other than the mouse. So we have a metaphor for that in a window of our sort of meeting area, which is a piece of paper with a hole in. So you're just not designing for yourself, people. You can't say it enough. You're not designing for yourself. You're designing for those people. That man in Holborn getting squashed by a bus is your user. So yeah, hubris. And you really watch it, because you can get the language of, yeah, we're user-centric. And you really ask yourself, are you really being user-centric? Have you done the testing with the real members of the audience and really believe what they've told you? I know I was guilty of arrogance, frankly. And it nearly, if we'd launched the GovUK with a big search box, which lots of people got excited by, you know, we'd have been idiots. So thank you, team, who are here, for seeing me right on that one. Finally, quickly, the painful question that I was asked at Product Tank. So why is it a painful question? It's a painful question because, for me personally, because a few years ago, a friend of mine, who I work with a lot, Matt Wood, who's at the BBC, he said, the thing about you, Tom, you're Machiavellian. And I said, oh, that doesn't sound very nice. I don't like the thought that. That's pejorative. And he went, no, that's a compliment. That's a compliment. Didn't feel like a compliment. I said, no, you really are. You're really Machiavellian. So Tom had to go away and read some books on Machiavelli, which I've done. And yeah, Machiavelli, you can make a case for Machiavelli. But it didn't feel good. The reason I say that is the question I got asked was by a young man after Product Tank. He was really in pain. You could see it. He said to me, how do I get the chance to do all this stuff? I'm a product manager, but I work for a large organisation that's just full of waterfall processes, nonsense. I can't get any space to do this stuff. He really was. He was just so, I felt for the guy. So I actually thought I'd have a think about how I've tried and failed to solve that problem. I've worked in the BBC, I've worked in Ofcom, and I'm now working in the government. Channel 4, actually brilliant. Channel 4, none of this applies to Channel 4, they're amazing. But the other three, trust me, they're sclerotic and challenging to do product management in, or to create the space to do product management in. And I used to say, JFDI, just do it. I think I irritated Tom Coates a lot with this approach. Yeah. So don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Think about it a bit more. I'll give you an example of when I JFDI'd it. There was a period in the BBC's history when loads of people were scraping BBC websites and building all sorts of cool things with the data they were scraping. You know, devs and hackers and things. It was really good. And the BBC was like, oh, this is bad. We've got to stop them. And Tom was part of this, we just about persuaded the BBC that maybe helping them was a better thing. And we took just enough permission to kind of do that. And so I did this thing called BBC Backstage, which was like a sort of development, it's just a developer network, basically. But I just sort of did it without a care in the world to the impact of doing it. It's quite easy to create a splash. I think I upset Tom quite a lot in how I did it. I certainly upset a lot of people who should have been supporters of what we're trying to do across the BBC just by causing a splash. And do you know what? If you just create a splash and you don't think of it, the ripples fade, the waters will close over, and it'll be back to the usual waterfall processes, everything closing down. So what I would say now is this. Spot a gap. Build yourself an umbrella. You've got to create yourself some cover to go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and let yourself more and more freedom to do proper user-centered product management. where you can really focus on the user. I'm talking about large organizations, and look, we're not all in startups. We don't always work in startups. And even when your startup scales, I bet you hit this problem as you get sclerotic and older. I bet you eBay has this problem. So the example I would give would be the gap that the gap in gov.uk in government was Martha's subhead, revolution not evolution. That's an opportunity. I saw that and I thought, I want to do that. I want to do that alpha. But I did it differently from the way I've done it in the past. I did it with a view to getting to the next stage, getting permission to do the next thing, to do the beta. Hence the product vision being quite cynical. Hence the fact that part of the umbrella was getting a very happy minister in Francis Maude, our Minister for Cabinet Office, to give permission budget to do the next beta. Hire brilliant boss Mike Bracken, who's now the director of GDS, so I don't have to do it. He's now the umbrella. He wanders around keeping all the shit off me, frankly. It's fantastic. So yeah. Secondly, show, don't tell. If you are writing a document in a large organization about why product management, agile project management, whatever you want to call it, is a better way than the way you're currently doing it, you've already failed. You've already failed. You have to show people why it's better. Now that might mean starting really small. Okay, so the example I give in the BBC is this. Is when the BBC, I helped write BBC's Charter Review, the BBC Charter in 2004. I obsessed about all the words, digital this, and BBC should have permission to do that. And no one ever read the bloody Charter, least of all in the BBC. What made a difference, well, the biggest impact I think I made in the entire time at the BBC was this box that I got these two chaps, the Ludlam brothers, to make for me. It cost me a few handful of £1,000s. And what this was, it was a PVR that recorded all BBC television for a week. This was sort of 2004 time. So just sat plugged into your telly, all BBC television for a week. And they built it in their garage. And I got them to build it because I got the opportunity to present to the BBC's executive board. And I thought, I want to show them, not tell them, that the world's about to change really significantly. And you know what? It really worked. It really worked. They just had so much fun being able to, you get 10,000 programs on there. And suddenly, their view of the world was different, got some space, got some permission, got a bit of an umbrella, could go on to do the next thing and the next thing. And that's really my following theme, which is you may well start small. You may start with £2,000. You can always find money in large organisations somewhere hidden under a carpet somewhere, some secret budget, something someone's forgot. Always. Not much, but you can find enough to get started and show that taking a proper product manager view, a proper user-centered view will do something better really quickly, really cheaply. So do that. Run really fast. Run faster than the organisation can possibly catch you. These are slow organisations. They won't catch you. If you do get caught and fired, well, you probably didn't want to work there anyway. And gather momentum. So gather momentum in terms of people going, blimey, they've just built that, and then they've done that, and then they've done that. That really worked in the BBC, actually, and I'm claiming far too much credit here for my history of BBC On Demand. But straight away after we did that box, I got permission to spend, I think, about £20,000 doing a sort of web version, a sort of social, so you could get all BBC television programmes only inside the BBC. Only those inside the BBC could use this special. But you basically, it was 2005, you could download and watch any BBC television programme from the web. It had a bit of social scheduling, a bit of rating. BBC people loved it, because they love telly. And suddenly on-demand television is a bit more real for people. Again, really cynically, and this is about gathering momentum, and this is about sort of what your product vision is. I did a page on this specifically for channel controllers, because channel controllers, the man, woman who runs BBC 1, 2, 3, or 4, they're really powerful in the organisation. And they want to see what's on their channel on this product. Now, the rest of the world doesn't give a damn, frankly, when you're navigating on-demand television. But they did. So we did them special pages, and they loved it even more. And eventually, when much more talented people than me came along, there was space and freedom to do iPlayer properly, eventually. Quickly, I'm nearly done. Introduce a new language. This goes back to my importance of propaganda. This is really important. In government, we talk about digital. We don't talk about IT. We talk about user needs, not requirements. We talk about agile, not waterfall. We talk about iterate, then iterate again. Introducing a new language is the best way to change your organisation. It really is. And I don't care if that's Machiavellian, that's the truth. Okay, I'm nearly done. So I sit next to an amazing woman in government digital service. She's called Kathy Settle. She's a lifetime career civil servant. And her former job before Mike Bracken, my boss, poached her, was to run the UK's civil contingencies. You might not know what that is, but she's basically the woman that whose job it was to plan how we pick up the pieces if really bad stuff happens. Like, if SARS decimates the country, if there's God forbid, some kind of war. Her job was to plan for that. And trust me, I'm really glad we live in Britain when they hire people like Cathy Settle. She's an amazing woman to be able to plan that level. She's no digital experience at all, none at all. And I showed her this presentation earlier and said, how do I finish? How do I finish? She said, oh, which sounds interesting. She said, I'll tell you something, my first boss, this is her speaking, my first boss in government said to me, he said, when you're in the civil service and you're bound by these rules and you know there's a right thing to do, you should feel the fear and then do the right thing anyway. And I think as a message to leave you with, whatever you're doing, it's quite scary being a product manager. It's your baby. It's quite easy in some organisations, some situations, to do the easy thing. And it's quite easy sometimes to sort of deliberately do obtuse things. You should really examine how you feel about what you're doing, what your emotions are. What are you scared about? Why are you scared about doing that? Then work out what the right thing to do is. Thank you very much.